Yeah, that's why Chongo's just bought a storage box for a year.
Yeah, that's smart. Okay, I pressed play. Oh, okay. What we did with Matisse and Louis was before we started, they kind of introduced themselves a little bit.
Okay.
Just for funsies.
Hi, I'm Jack. I'm 20. I know How because we do the BDA together, and also she's just a wonderful person to be around. So that's how I know her. I'm not the biggest of film watchers actually. I mean, I'm saying this and I'm about to record now a podcast, which is a bit embarrassing. But I do quite a lot of acting and that kind of thing. So I guess that's maybe where my supposed knowledge on the topic comes from, according to How's eyes at least. So yeah, that's me more or less.
And I'm Zofia. And I know how because of BDA, but also just Bond. That's very true. And when it comes to cinema, I guess I'm on the opposite side because I love to watch and I try to do it quite often. And I dabbled with reviews as well. Yeah, but it usually doubles down to just watching YouTube videos about movies that I would never see. So I guess that's where my knowledge stems from.
All levels. Great.
Yeah, real.
Okay, let me think of the first question I could ask you guys. Okay, something very general. What's your favorite movie? This is the easiest question, Jack.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I have a few I like. I think my favorite movie at the moment, or the one at least I kind of rave about to other people, is it's called Babylon from 1980. It's a film that follows. It's big partly because it's about like a kind of a big love of mine, which is kind of like dance culture and club culture and that kind of thing, and it follows like this reggae dub sound system in I think it's in either Brixton or Deptford or something in South London basically, and it's just a really 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 good film, and the soundtrack is amazing. So
Is the 2022 Babylon related?
Not at all. Not at all. The reason why it's called Babylon is because in like Rastafari culture, Babylon is anywhere that's not it's basically like hell on earth essentially, in like London or like the US or that kind of thing. As a result of like waves of immigration, you want to get back to like a Pan-African place in Ethiopia, and that's why you want to sail away from Babylon supposedly. But it uses like a biblical reference as well. But the Babylon to do with Hollywood, completely different. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Zofia.
It's a very very hard question because it's just very very hard to choose a one. But I think the one that stuck with me the most and the one that I've watched the most is La Grande Bellezza, The Great Beauty. It's an Italian movie directed by Sorrentino. I think is one of the biggest Italian directors right now. I know also it won a few big awards in Cannes and also got an Oscar, so it's very critically acclaimed. Nevertheless, it's very, very hard to describe the movie. I feel like also it's a movie that you get with your senses. It's very beautifully shot, and the music has stayed with me on my playlist for years afterwards. But if I would describe it with few words, I'd say it follows an old artistic critic who lives in Rome. And it doesn't necessarily have a structure. It's just him wandering around and reminiscing about the past, and then just the Italianness. I guess it's the whole premise of the movie.
That's beautiful. Okay. I'm not sure you have a lot of directors that come in mind, but do you have a specific director who you really love their visual style of, that's very coherent through all their lines of movies?
Mine might be a bit banal because his movies are the style, but I always, when I think about the shooting and the visuals, Kar-Wai Wong.
Yeah.
Oh, I was about to say him as well.
There's just something about the colors and also the frames within the frames that he employs, and the fact that the dialogue is very sparse in his movies, and it's kind of similarly to Sorrentino in the sense that it's a very aesthetically.
Yeah, well, he was originally trained as a graphic designer. And that was his, like, he worked as a graphic designer for like at least a few years before he went into film. So I think you can really see that in his movies, because it's very visual. It's very, and even in terms of graphic as well and that kind of thing, it's there, I think.
That does make sense.
Yeah.
Okay, I had this combo with Matisse and Louis also, but do you think these directors that come to mind that have these like really distinct visual styles, like Wong Kar-Wai or Wes Anderson or even Xavier Dolan, Damien Chazelle, maybe even a little bit, do you sometimes feel like their movies are considered such classics predominantly because of the visual aesthetic? Like, for example, for Wong Kar-Wai, sometimes I feel like just his directing style, like he never finishes a full script and he goes on set and just tells the actors to do what they want to fill in the blanks. Do you ever feel like because of that there's like maybe a lack of substance in the plots themselves?
I was going to say, I think it's not so much an advantage or a disadvantage, but it's a choice. I don't think you can do one exactly without the other. And I don't know, I was reading a review of Fallen Angels by Roger Ebert, you know, and he was saying watching Fallen Angels is like flicking through a really cool art school zine kind of thing, rather than watching a film that's telling you a story from front to back, or like reading an article in a magazine that has lots of substance in it. The substance is the watching it itself, and I guess the feeling you take away from it in a way. So I don't know, I don't think it's sometimes maybe I want a film to like hold my hand and lead me through a plot, and other times I want to like zoom around Hong Kong. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I think it I don't think it's a lack of substance. I feel like the substance is what you're seeing rather than what you're following in terms of narrative.
Exactly. And sometimes it's much better not to be followed, you know, by the director, to have the space to think about it and see the scenarios of what could have happened. Like Kar-Wai Wong is the master of that, of the open endings, exactly.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the space to like think what you want about it, you know. I guess, I don't know, it's like any art, you'll look at something and if you have a really obvious scene that you know what's happening, and it really is the case, you take maybe a certain thing away from it. Whereas, I don't know, if you're looking at something that's maybe more abstracted, you might not, you know, not everyone's going to take the same thing away from it, and maybe that's I don't know, I don't think it has to be a good or bad thing per se. I think it's just a thing, and then in the context it's in, it becomes good or bad.
Yeah, I guess it depends if you like it that way or not.
Right, exactly. It's a personal preference as well.
Okay, I have a follow-up question, because I also agree with Zofia. As a movie watcher, maybe because I just haven't, well, I'm the opposite of you. I haven't really watched a lot of movies, or I started in January, but I much prefer looking at the or it's not black and white. It's not one or the other, but if the form of it is beautiful, like the composition and the colors, and it's coherent throughout, I find myself more likely to, you know, be engaged with the film. But then sometimes, like for example, for Wong Kar-Wai's movies or Wes Anderson's movies, there's a specific form or visual or color palette or aesthetic that goes from like In the Mood for Love to Fallen Angels or Budapest Hotel to like Asteroid City, blah blah blah. And because I was reading about this a couple months ago, and it's when I found out the people who are actually in charge of the visual aesthetics of these movies are not the directors, but the cinematographers. So for Wes Anderson, we have Robert Yeoman, and then for I'm not sure for Wong Kar-Wai, I forgot their name. Some white guy who works in Hong Kong. But if you look at the discography of the cinematographers of all of Robert Yeoman's works, with Wes Anderson or without, and you look at the DP for Wong Kar-Wai, his movies Wong Kar-Wai and without Wong Kar-Wai, there's more of a continuance of the visual aesthetic for the DP's movies than there are for Wes Anderson. Because for Wes Anderson, before he started working with Robert Yeoman, he had it wasn't horrible, but it was very like basic, kind of like almost like an Amazon Prime-y movie visual in my opinion. So at times like these, when there are directors who are specifically known for their visual styles and are like championed for it, like Wes Anderson, you know, do you think there's something wrong with the fact that the credit is predominantly given to the director instead of the cinematographers?
I think I don't have an answer to this question, but I would just generally say that it's a problem with cinema. Like, of course, it's so collaborative, and we only get the credits at the end of the movie, and you know nobody stays for them, and it's just acclaimed by this one individual. And we could say the same about like the lighting, the script as well, because hardly ever the screenwriter is the director. So it's a generally bigger problem with cinema, but in art in general as well. Like we just like to have a face behind something, no?
That's true.
It's a way of identifying it. Like, you know, it may be a group of people, but you can say it's also maybe like it's a useful thing. You know, you can bring it up in conversation and say someone's last name rather than, I don't know, saying 12 people's, if you know what I mean. I don't know. But yeah, I think we'd like to think it's all one person and exalt them and think, wow, they're amazing. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not hugely familiar with many directors of photography, so I can't really, I don't know. Like,
No, you said the same thing.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I'll ask for both of your cultures. I mean, to be fair, the British have produced a lot of films, but is there do you ever feel like, maybe I'll ask for the Irish part of you, just to even it out with Zofia. But do you ever feel like there is a underrepresentation? Like it's such a shame that there's an underrepresentation of the cinema from your culture in like the mainstream?
No, because the beauty of it is that it's not a mainstream.
Oh, so you like to gatekeep it?
I mean, not per se, but I mean, there's something about movies, you know, written and produced input, and that it's just on very, very specific and unique way. And some of them get critically acclaimed. We are on the streak of getting a lot of movies nominated for awards, which is arguably so amazing. Nevertheless, I'm quite happy that they stay away from the mainstream.
Okay, wait, before we move on to Jack, I have a follow-up for this. Because in my film class, there was I'm so sorry, I forgot the name of the girl, but it was really funny. She has nothing to do with Eastern Europe or Czechoslovakia, but we were talking about French New Wave, because that's like basically what my whole class was about. And then she started telling the teacher that she thought it was a shame because there's so many different new wave film movements that happen in the post-Soviet countries that are not that known about. Like, she argued that Czechoslovakian new wave was much more powerful and much more influential than French new wave. So I mean, I'm guessing, I haven't watched myself, but I'm guessing Poland also had their own new wave movement. Do you ever feel like, because part of going to the mainstream, there's the whole like, oh, okay, like I'll take this like token as like an aesthetic, like I'm so Eastern European, even though I'm completely American, blah, blah, blah. But part of it is also when it enters the mainstream, it deserves a certain credibility, or it deserves a certain influence onto the rest of the cinema world that, it lays the path for future projects, etc. So you don't think there's anything that could have, or do you think there's anything interesting from the history of Polish cinema that people should know about?
There's so much. That's the biggest problem. There's so much. I guess I'm not schooled enough, to speak about the history and the movements in general, but definitely we had our own La Nouvelle Vague, and it was very much so centered around directors such as Wajda, Pasikowski as well, who maybe got more acclaimed critically. And if I would have to sort of describe it in a few ways, it's very, very hard to look back and then they'd say something about it. But yeah, I mean, if one, then I would greatly recommend you watch some of those directors as well, and then many others that have just slipped my mind. But there's something very raw and very brutal about Polish cinema, especially. And the fact that there was no money whatsoever to produce movies as well makes them maybe less impressive in the form, but then the dialogues and also like the metaphors and the symbolism of the movies. I don't know. It's very, 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 very hard. And it's very, very hard to emulate it, I don't think. Well, the movies are in their own specific way. Nevertheless, I think I lack words to describe how beautiful and great those movies. But it's the problem of cinema with with translation, with the budget and everything. Yeah. That it's just it's got hard to get through, I guess. But more and more people come to Poland, more and people see Polish movies. They have amazing film schools as well. Yeah. In Łódź and Katowice, so there are more movies made, and I feel like it's going. Progressing. It's progressing.
Irish
expert.
No,
I don't think I'm going to talk about Ireland because I'm just not qualified to speak on it in a serious way.
Wait, keep this just so I can check with the
camera.
No,
yeah, of course. About Britain. Well, I think there are a lot of British film genres that are very well known and couldn't really be called underrepresented. I think, but there are, I think, some bits and pieces that aren't maybe appreciated on a worldwide scale. I think because when you were talking, Zofia, I was thinking about there are certain things that the mainstream is essentially what can be translated or culturally shared in a way, and I think at least amongst like a certain group of countries that sort of are tastemakers potentially or that kind of thing, and accessing cultural context which the movies are framed in is really difficult if you're not from those places. And I guess one thing I find is that, for example, British comedy isn't really something that I mean, maybe it's bigger, but I feel like, I don't know, the sense of humor I find in mainstream films, especially in American side, there's never much appreciation for like a British wit potentially, which I honestly think is much, much, much funnier personally. And I think if people haven't, I don't know, encountered it, stuff like, I don't know, it's not really a film, but stuff like, I don't know, what epitomizes it, maybe the Peep Show or that kind of thing. It's this film, no, it's not a film, it's a TV series that goes on seasons and seasons and seasons about these two guys who live in a flat shared, right? Or they live in the same building kind of thing, and then they're just best friends. And it's just excruciatingly painful, their interactions with people. They're atrocious at dealing with, I don't know, anyone or anything in their lives. They're so mean. They just hate the world. They're very spiteful, but in just the funniest way possible. And it's great to watch them bumble around and just kind of do nothing. And it uses a lot of like first person view stuff. And then you'll have like their brain talking over the thing. They'll be like, right, David, don't fucking say that, or something like that. And I don't know, that kind of very British humour I don't think gets appreciated on a main stage. Like, I don't know, the David Mitchell stuff is, I think, a good example of that, maybe.
Yes, but I wanted to ask you how the British feel on Danny Boyle's movies, especially like Trainspotting or in Bruges as well. I think it's Boyle, because I feel like they're uniquely very, very British, but then
Trainspotting is very, very Scottish.
It's very, very Scottish. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
There's when I look back at my friends, for example, in Poland, who absolutely adored that movie, there's some kind of, I don't know, even fetishization of the humor, of the brutal reality that it was, which is quite interesting as well.
That's definitely fair. I think, exactly. But it's the stuff that, I don't know, maybe there's the stuff that kind of romanticizes that grit that maybe becomes more popular. But I don't know, the day-to-day lives of like British people who are just a bit funny maybe doesn't make it in the same way. I don't know. But I think that's... I've seen parts of In Bruges. I think it's quite witty in the same way, isn't it? I remember vaguely it being very funny. But I don't know, maybe I'm being unfair and saying it's underrepresented, but I just feel like maybe sometimes when I watch films in the mainstream, they're not funny in the same way I like it to be funny, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I think the humour is quite distinct in terms of difference as well. Yeah, I don't know.
I agree.
Yeah. Do you anything?
Liberate the English.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I feel like when it comes to the cinema, humor is such a skill to have, to employ. There's very few movies that are just, I don't know, universally extremely funny and then can, I don't know, resonate with the mainstream, but also with the critics as well. How if you think about a really, really funny movie, what comes to mind?
This is hard. No, but okay, the things that I think it's the case where it's like everyone has different humors. But for example, I am someone who likes to be like holier than thou and be like, my favorite movies are these like indie movies that you don't know. But then when I think of like the movies that really like got me like crying, like gut-wrenchingly funny, it's usually like really shitty movies. Like maybe a really shitty franchise like Pitch Perfect or Bad Moms, or the one with like Adam Sandler and the other guy and their neighbors. So
Bad Neighbors?
Yeah, I think so.
Grown Ups?
Something like Grown Ups. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, honestly, like, I don't know, maybe it's something where humor, I feel like, is sometimes viewed as not so, or like it can be tasteful humor, but oftentimes humor is not something that's going to be taken seriously by like movie critics, like the Academy, for example. Whenever we have nominees, it's like predominantly something that's like tragic or like something about social commentary or etc.
Or the humor is not explicit.
Yes.
Funny, like the Coen brothers when you think about
Yes. Like, for example, I saw Banshees of Inisherin, and it's something, on Wikipedia it said it was something like a tragicomedy. So it had very like underlying kind of like dark humor, like not too many spoilers, but at one point like he would like cut off his whole hand and like all his fingers, and then a donkey ate a finger.
I saw the trailer of this.
Yeah. And then everyone was crying because the donkey died. Like, it's really funny, but at the same time it's also like so gruesome because there's so much gore in it, you know what I mean? But even this, I believe in 2023's Oscars, Banshees of Inisherin didn't win a single prize, and I'm not sure if they got nominated a lot either. Even though it was very highly praised by Letterboxd.
I don't really have something to say about the Banshees of Inisherin because I haven't seen it. But I do have to say that I think the funniest films I ever saw, at least the ones that made the biggest mark on me as a kid, were the Monty Python films. Especially The Holy Grail and The Life of Brian. Yeah. I think my favourite line in any film ever is when Jesus' mum in The Life of Brian says he's not the Messiah, he's a very naughty boy. And I think that's really good. I don't know. I think they are pure, stupid, absurd, ridiculous, all of the above. I don't know if they're very... I don't know how watched they are internationally. I mean, they're very watched, or... I have no clue, honestly.
Yes. In Finland, at least.
Okay, cool. I think they must be completely international then, honestly. But yeah, I don't know. That's I think they're reasonably critically acclaimed as well, are they not? Yeah. I think, and they are purely stupid, I think.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a reasonable counterexample, but I don't know. I think it can be, but I think also the way they use their comedy is, I mean, I last watched it when I was like fucking really young now. So I don't know if maybe it will have changed on me with age, but I don't know. I thought, when I think back on it now, the kind of way they subvert the role of Jesus or that kind of thing in Life of Brian, or the way they are just stupid in the Holy Grail, I don't know. There's something also that it still has a message. It doesn't feel maybe like Grown Ups or Pitch Perfect or that kind of thing. I don't know. So yeah, I can't. But I know I wanted to bring those up because they left a real mark on me, and they are, I think, pure comedy, if anything.
You know, you bring up Monty Python made me think of Adam Samberg, the guy from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He used to have he did like kind of like music video skits with his band, I think. They were called like the Long Island Turtlenecks.
Nice, great.
Something like that. And like, honestly, I think I really miss I guess this is straying a little bit from films, but I really miss that humor from like the 2010s of like on YouTube, when it was just video after video. It was just like YouTubers doing like weird ass skits, you know? And then it was like, I don't know, a parody of a music video, or just like Ryan Higa like videos. Like so much like a lot of production was put into that, a lot of time, effort, screenwriting. I kind of miss that humor.
I don't know.
Okay, back to film, sorry. I had a question, because I actually I feel like Zofia definitely doesn't watch this, but the new season of Bridgerton came out.
We actually watched this. Zosha and I watched this. And you know what? I was gonna say we watched it together, and I was actually gonna say that I think there's some, because from our experience watching Bridgerton together, I think I realized the humor in, say, Grown Ups or Pitch Perfect or that kind of thing. I don't think it really comes from the film anymore. I think it comes from you watching that in a group setting, maybe. I don't know, because I couldn't dream of watching them alone. But if someone went, shall we put it on in a group? I think, you know, maybe it has something there. And I know that's what we did with Bridgerton, and I was crying with laughter.
I was crying with laughter as well, especially during the sex scenes. We just had so much blood.
Yeah, there was so much arse. Like, what was going on? Yeah.
Like, it was in the middle of dinner. And
Oh my god, yeah, that bit as well. Yeah, god. We made it through how many, like 2.5 episodes? And I actually watched an episode last night as well, but with friends. I wasn't just alone at home watching it. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a very strange phenomenon of watching TV series or just purely bad movies for a laugh, which is quite cool, and I don't know, it should be explored more. I feel like few cinemas and wars are doing those like purposely bad movies that are ever produced, you know, and watch the cinema space. But that's a very, 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 very nice experience of watching the movies, not having to think about it more, just narrating and commenting.
And I think that's where the fun comes from, definitely. Yeah.
Agree. Wait, okay, I had a question prepared, but before I talk about this, have you guys seen the movie that, you know, the Everything Everywhere All at Once? It was produced by the two, their names are what?
I don't know. It's really bad. I'm sorry.
Oh
no. It's on my
no.
watch this time.
Because they share a name, right?
Yeah. I feel a little culturally offended, Jack.
I know.
Daniel Kwan and Daniel Shen.
Right, by the two Daniels. And they did, before this, they did a feature film together with Daniel Radcliffe. The movie of like the dead corpse that just farts.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
I think you should watch it, Jack. I think you'd like it.
I'll be the fact checker after this podcast. And it was an amazing, funny movie. And also a breakthrough for Daniel Radcliffe, I feel like, over the years. You know, it went away. Swiss Army Man.
Yes.
Swiss Army Man.
Swiss Army Man. And you know, because you were talking about humor, and I was like, I don't think there's any feature films lately that come to mind. But low-key, that comes to mind. But a problem with that is also the Daniels were heavily critiqued for that film because people didn't they didn't understand the humor, and at some points like people would say like, oh, it's too vulgar, you know, like who wants to sit through this. I believe they won a prize for this at Cannes. It was either Cannes or it was some other indie film award ceremony. But people, like half of the crowd literally left during the screening because they were like, it's too vulgar. Like this kind of comedy, it's not suitable for such a esteemed audience. Do you agree? Clearly not, because you love that film.
I completely disagree. Yeah. Yeah, but you know, that's a completely bigger problem that I think extends just much more even for the cinema. But I guess the movie critics or the space or even the directors or the whole academy is a very, very hermetic body that has lots of problems on its own. And I don't know, watching a funny movie about farting corpse shouldn't be, you know, shouldn't be a problem. I guess an argument could be made on their part is that it's in a way not emulating a certain sophistication and I don't know, whatever else that they were seeking for. Nevertheless, like, man, come on. That's a great movie.
Man, come on, it's this argument. I wanted to ask you guys, I also had this conversation with my film teacher, but do you think the title Film Critic, do you think it's something very not exclusive, but it's not something that you can casually give to anyone? Like, for example, if I watched a movie and I went on IMDb or I went on Letterboxd and wrote a review, you can't count me as a film critic. Do you think this way, or do you think no? Like, anyone who has a comment, like, it's a very democratized label. Anyone who has a comment, they deserve the title film critic.
I was going to say, I don't know, my first response to that is, I think it's really hard to institutionally wall yourself in, especially in the age of the internet. I think, personally, I would probably call someone a film critic if what they're saying about the film is thoughtful. I don't know, if you're going on and you're like, yeah, this was a pretty good watch, 8 out of 10. You know, I don't know if I'd call you a film critic because it's like leaving an Amazon review. Yeah. I don't know. But I don't know, maybe if you're engaging with the film in a bigger way, I don't think the label is something that should be closed off potentially. I don't know. I'm not I don't trawl through reviews, but I started reading a lot of Roger Ebert's film reviews especially, and I don't know, the way he talked about film and the thoughtfulness of it and the way he was able to relate it to other things and make it all make sense. I don't know, there was something super valuable in that. So I don't think, maybe it's not the best idea if we say everyone's a film critic, but then that loses the kind of space for genuine thoughtfulness and reflection. I think it's, like cultivating that space. I don't know. Yeah. But I don't really know how you do that more than just me saying it. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Zofia?
I think I'd say that I have no problem. I do not, as you kind of said, that why should we care about the labels or whatever, without, like, if somebody has something interesting and opinionated to say, why not? Wouldn't take it away. Nevertheless, I also think that maybe not now, but before internet, definitely the label carried certain heaviness. And just in general, I feel like the criticism of movies is kind of going away in a sense. We I don't know. It's kind of falling apart. So maybe that's also some kind of historicism behind it.
Right. I asked this because, like, I think it's definitely a fact that people who are cinephiles can be a little bit pretentious, or there's this idea of heavy breaths. There's this idea of, you know, like, I've gotten into so many fights with my friends, or like medium arguments with like Matisse or Cynthia, for example, where they tell me about a film that they view as an absolute masterpiece, and I went there, I was like, 3.5 out of 5. And then they would be like, no, but it's a masterpiece. Or when I tell them something like, for example, I thought Tar was okay. Like, it wasn't life-changing. It was life-shattering. But it was a fun throwback to, like, 2000s to 2010 cinema. I was like, this is so distinctly familiar that it's interesting that it comes out in 2023. But to this, Cynthia was like, no, that it was absolutely garbage. So I feel like sometimes, and they argue so strongly about it, sometimes I feel like people who watch film, myself included, we have very strong opinions and we tend to view it as truth. Or we think that there's a majority opinion sometimes on films, that there's this threshold we pass. And after that threshold, you know, it's clear that some of these films are masterpieces. Some of them are just there. How was I saying this? Oh yeah, and for this, so when I go on Letterboxd, for example, and I look at reviews, and then I look at reviews, critiquing these reviews, some people are like, this is an uninformed opinion, so it doesn't count as valid film critique. Because you didn't understand the film, and you think it's bad, and you didn't understand it because you didn't have the context of the time, of the period, of the director's intentions, yada, yada, yada. That's why you saying this film sucks because of X, Y, and Z isn't valid. For me, I think that films are supposed to be something that are so universally open to everyone. Like, it makes no sense to me if films... To fully understand a film, you have to know all this historical value. You have to be educated in the theory, in the whatever. So to me, sometimes I think that, yes, maybe film reviews are falling apart, but, you know, maybe we just have to redefine the label. Like, someone who knows nothing about the history of... yeah, like American Asian culture, but still appreciate everything ever all at once. That's valid. Don't know if you agree.
I think maybe a great film is something that is accessible to everyone, and also people with certain like references or that kind of thing. I'm not sure whether it's a good or bad thing per se. Being like open, like obtuse through the references you have can mean it's a great film for some people and a bad film for others. Yeah. But I don't know. I don't know if I have a very strong answer as to whether good films should be open to everyone irrespective of context. I don't know. Because that feels almost impossible to achieve. We were talking earlier about films in specific countries' cinema culture. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, a film like a British comedy film, for example, or like The In-Betweeners, or just some shit, you know, I don't know. For me, at least, it will be very different to people who haven't lived that experience. And I don't know, the more narrative you have, the more reference you have, the more that's going to be specifically good, or specifically at least resonant with certain people. I don't know. But I wanted to say, I do think, nonetheless, that even if the role of the film critic has died, the community of people who like films still seem to pass very strong judgment on what is a good film and a bad film. And to some extent, there is somewhat... not consensus, but there are certain films almost universally regarded as, you know, great or not, or that kind of thing. I just think it's made by maybe a wider group of people with less of a sort of a central kind of like person with a mouthpiece per se. But I don't know, you still see it in the role of like online YouTube creators or that kind of thing. At least in the case of music, for example. I don't know, I used to watch a lot of Anthony Fantano videos, The Needle Drop. And I mean, he has huge say in whether people think, I know, a certain album by a certain artist is really good or not. And I know there are probably similar parallels to that in film. Maybe not one as huge of an example, but yeah.
Yeah. I also wanted to say that if one would create the movies, you know, theoretically, magically accessible to everybody and understood by everybody without the context, without the history, without the culture, etc. What's the role of the abstract? What's the role of the symbol? What's the role of the metaphor? What's the role of even the mimesis, those sort of like, recreating the reality of the specific, you know, environment, etc. Like the movie you brought up, Jack, Babylon, like for the majority of part, I didn't understand the word were saying because like British at that time was very influenced by Jamaican.
Yeah, well, they were like Jamaican immigrants in the film, so they're speaking in like patois more than they're speaking like, I don't know, a British dialect.
Exactly. Nevertheless, it was the part of the movie that made it very real and very, just culturally, I guess, specific. Exactly. And if I would want to dig deeper, probably I would need to go through the language and then watch it 3 times more to understand what they were actually saying. Nevertheless, it was a very, very interesting experience of what we was talking about earlier. It was a piece of very specific culture that we discovered.
Yeah, and also I think, I don't know, in that case, for example, I think that can be something really interesting where a film, if it's not specific and if it's not, accessible to all, in many ways, that becomes part of the learning experience as well. I don't know, like, if you don't, say you watch Babylon and you don't know about a certain kind of culture, the, sound system culture and that kind of thing, the exploration of that thereafter, or understanding the history of the Windrush generation or that kind of thing, it's valuable in and of itself within the film. I don't know, also, I know I did a project for my narratives final essay, and it was on Indonesian cinema under the Suharto regime, and I don't know, watching those films and understanding those films in context, like, I don't know, I think it's hyper important, and it really wasn't accessible to me, but it took the whole project, and then I was like, wow, okay, this is really meaningful in this context, kind of.
Yeah, and maybe the accessibility is what separates the mainstream it is what separates the mainstream from the other things. But sometimes being niche is nice.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree too.
Even as pretentious as it sounds, niche is cool.
We accept it, Zofia.
Yeah, but something can also be niche because you know about that thing and not in a pretentious way as well.
Yeah.
I don't know. There'll be certain films that just won't make it past a certain point because, I don't know, people don't like yo-yoing or something like that.
Or people don't like cannibalism,
Real.
bones and all.
Right. Yeah.
Are there? Actually, I don't know if you guys follow it at all, but because some people from our school just went to the Cannes Film Festival because they did this 3-day thing. Are there any upcoming films that you guys are looking forward to this year? Zofie, choose just one.
No. Me personally, I really love A24, the studio.
A24.
Everything that comes from A24 is generally...
Okay, after this question, we could talk about A24 because I have some strong feelings.
Okay. Wait, I'm just Googling because I know the title, nevertheless. So maybe Jack can speak about.
Shit. Honestly, I'm gonna say again, I think really my current movie watching is not in the present, and it's more in the
Past?
Yeah, really. No, not as in like I'm watching films in the present, but I'm not watching stuff that's coming out now at the moment, to be honest. I don't know. It's not something I've probably kept up with enough, or ever really kept up with it in terms of like cycles or that kind of thing.
Yeah, me neither until this year.
Yeah, real.
But yeah, I kind of just wanted to ask you guys because I also totally follow up with it.
Yeah, I haven't found the title. Nevertheless, I know Carl Gustafsson plays a very, very big role there, and then it's like a very very satirical comedy, kind of with everything is in black and hue, and I think they are vampires or whatever. I would need to get into it. Nevertheless, I saw the trailer, and I'm really, really excited for that. I will try to.
Super cool.
This is fun, actually. It makes me want to watch.
What's a film you find wildly overrated?
Okay, so for me, I know it's completely stabilizes what I've just said and everything, but I watched Kubrick's Space Odyssey, and it just wasn't a movie for me. Like I appreciated the form and the beauty, and I tried to get into it, but it's just not the movie that I liked personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, nevertheless, I know it's a classic and loved by many, but it's just the movie that underwhelmed me, I would say.
I don't know. I just didn't have a great experience with this film, and I know a lot of people consider it a masterpiece, but it was Françoise Truffaut's Les 400 Coups. And I think, I don't know, it looked pretty, but maybe, I don't know, it being like very, very French was difficult for me because I watched it in the beginning. I don't know, I watched it like midway through last year. I watched it with Aaron and Louis, funnily enough, actually. And I don't know, it wasn't really, I didn't go away from it being like, boom, this is great, you know. I was just kind of like, okay, it's a film. There was Paris there and stuff, and he went to the boys' home for a bit. I don't know, yeah.
I don't know.
That's all right. I don't know.
Cleo 5 to 7. Oof, I feel really bad saying this because, you know, I do love Varda, and I know Alessandra loves this film. But I'm not gonna lie, you know, after a whole semester of watching like French New Wave films, I think there's something to be said about the fact that the French New Wave, as influential, revolutionary as they were, I think all the directors had issues with screenwriting. Like, because from what I understand, their whole thing was that they critique these big conventional directors who make their films all about like, you know, philosophical jargon. Like there's not really like an ongoing plot, but it's a lot of like literature and diving into that and exploring that in the dialogue. It's just so bizarre to me because they do the exact same thing. You know, Cleo 5 to 7 is like this woman who discovers that she might have cancer and like waits like from 5 to 7 o'clock and like goes around Paris. But like a lot of these French New Wave films, it's just like the main characters and they're always the same, Belmondo or Anna Karina or whoever, and they just, you know, they walk around, we observe them looking at stuff. They have like conversations that have nothing to do with progressing the plot, but they're there because of some like in some existential way it's meaningful, yada yada. But like if we're talking about substantial plot, like there's not really a film that comes to mind for the French New Wave.
I think also it's because, I don't know, French people like big existential philosophy in general from my experiences of 2 years here. So I don't know, maybe that's why they like it a lot. Yeah.
And I think that's extended because, well, he's not French, he's Canadian, but Xavier Dolan did a film, Juste la fin du monde. And like it was with an entire like A-list French cast with like the guy Vincent Cassel, Léa Seydoux, etc. And it's just like you follow this like really chaotic family for about 2 hours. Once again, it's just like a lot of like big thematic things, but like not a lot of plot going on. But maybe it's a preference. I don't know. Interesting. What else could I ask you guys? Do you guys ever find yourselves Like, when you look at your favorite movies, do you feel like there's specific genres that you prefer more? Or is it just completely random?
Definitely. I think I like films that I feel have some kind of, I don't know. I prefer social commentary films a lot of the time, honestly.
Okay.
I feel like Babylon's quite a good example of that, and it being probably my favourite film. I also really, really like La Haine. La Haine with Vincent Cassel, and yeah, that's a really... And another very... Maybe similar in theme to Babylon as well. And also, I just like a lot of documentary. I don't know, and that kind of thing. I don't know, maybe not social commentary quite, but yeah. Another film I really liked was Le Rayon Vert. It was it was The Green Ray. It was a French film that follows this lady in Paris who's trying to go on a summer holiday. But it's really fucking good. I don't know, I loved it. She was really anxious. I don't know, it spoke to me. It was a really good one though. But yeah, I don't know. I think mostly social commentary though. I think that's the genre that sticks out to me for sure.
I wouldn't say so that I have a specific genre that I prefer. Nevertheless, as I mentioned, I really appreciate movies that are just beautifully shot and have some kind of aesthetic behind them. I'm also I really, really like psychological dramas. I love when there is tension. I love when there are good dialogues. And the emotions of the screams are very, very, very raw. And I think if you would look at my IMDb account, it would probably be either dramas or just movies about growing up as well.
Yeah, I like coming of age films as well.
A very, very big one for me as well. Yeah. But I was thinking more about Linklater, like Dazed and Confused. It's a movie that is up my favorites. And yeah.
Richard Linklater, that's the Before Sunrise series guy, right?
But also Boyhood, Dazed and Confused, and so many more.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Do you have any final comments or anything you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, just watch Le Rayon Vert. I think it's a really good film. That's my opinion. It's my closing one. I really enjoyed it, and I don't know, I haven't heard people talk about it, and I thought it was really cool. Yeah.
I'd say dig deeper into Polish cinema.
Yeah. And watch some British comedies.
Yeah, there are a few good ones there as well. My personal favorite, The Innocent Wizards. Beautiful, beautiful movie.
I trust you.
I trust Zofia too.
See, she's not gatekeeping.
No, she's not. That's great.
Do you guys have letterbox accounts?
I have my Polish letterbox account, which is called FilmWeb. It's a completely different site, but it's just...
Oh, do you have an IMDb? Do you want to link your IMDb?
You apparently have to say it. In the meantime, I don't. But maybe I will. We'll see. I started writing reviews for all the books I read, so maybe I'll do films as well.
Super cool.
I don't know. I lost my IMDb account, but if anybody would want to check out FilmWeb, you can just log in, and oh my god, the username is so embarrassing.
No, it's not sure. Hit us with it.
I was just really high on life when I was doing it. It's called Cassandra _420.
Cassandra 420.
That's really good.
That's really fucking good. Oh my god, I'm following Cassandra.
Is Cassandra your middle name?
No, it's just Alexandra without a...
Oh.
But also, you know, Greek mythology and everything.
You're just high on life. So
I'm just high on life.
That's so good. I'm so glad you're high on life.
Clips to Matisse and Louis.
Yeah, right, yeah, you can cut it to them.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thank you guys for doing this.
Thank you, How. I had so much fun.
So much fun as well.
Really.
It really made me want to
watch more films.
more films.
Update me on it.
We will. Oh, actually, how?
Yes.
We are doing a film newsletter. Maybe.
Film newsletter. We're thinking about sending each other.
I would love to be part of this.
Yeah, it was going to be